Hey everybody, I'm Howard Tiersky. Welcome once again to the Winning Digital Customer Show. And today we are celebrating 7-Eleven Day. Happy 7-Eleven Day. Now, technically, 7-Eleven Day was yesterday. We do our live casts on Mondays and Wednesdays. Today is actually July 12th. But that's great because 7-Eleven was on a Sunday. Hopefully it was a sunny Sunday by you, the way it was by me. I myself was at the Jersey Shore yesterday. A perfect day for a nice cold Slurpee. I didn't actually have one, but I had a frozen lemonade on the boardwalk in Point Pleasant. In any case, I want to wish you a happy 7-Eleven Day, but also use this as an opportunity to talk about what we can learn as innovators and executives focused on digital transformation from 7-Eleven. You know, sometimes we think of 7-Eleven, well, let me put it this way. Sometimes we think about innovation and digital transformation happening at big, exciting, slick, high-tech kind of companies. We probably don't think of 7-Eleven in that way. But 7-Eleven actually has a fantastic history of transformation and innovation. And given that it is only one day after 7-Eleven Day, let's take a few minutes and look at that because they're a great example for us all to aspire to. So let me just make sure my slides are working here. So first of all, do you know the origin of 7-Eleven? I think most people don't. 7-Eleven began in 7-Eleven began as the Southland Ice Company, started in the early 20th century. And their initial business was selling blocks of ice. And back then, what was the main application for blocks of ice? It was for, oops, no, don't look at that. I'll get to that. Well, let me rewind here. So Southland Ice Company started in the early 20th century. And what was their business? It was selling blocks of ice. What was the main application back then for blocks of ice? Well, it was for your ice box, what we today would call a refrigerator. But back then it was referred to as an ice box because the way it worked was pretty simple. It had two compartments, one for a giant block of ice and the other for your food so you could keep it cool because this was before modern electric refrigerators. So that was a pretty good business back in the time when most households had an ice box in their home to keep their food cold. And everybody, as you can imagine, what happens to ice? It melts and turns into water. And so you need to continue to go back to your ice company or have deliveries from your ice company of a fresh block of ice over and over and over. Fantastic subscription business model in the early 20th century. In 1927, however, a guy named Johnny Jefferson, referred to as Uncle Johnny Jefferson, Jefferson Green, Uncle Johnny Jefferson Green, he had an idea. And in addition to selling ice, he started selling what he called everyday staples from the Southland Ice Company, which was located in Dallas, Texas. Now, why did he do that? Well, one thing was he realized that many people might like a place to be able to get other things than ice, like milk, eggs, cheese, things that need to be kept cold as well. And after all, he had this giant storehouse of ice. So it was very easy for him to keep these items cold using the ice that he was waiting to sell and expand his business. But you know, I've never met, as you can imagine, Uncle Johnny Jefferson Green, but that 1927, perhaps by coincidence, but perhaps not, was the year that General Electric introduced the first electric refrigerator. That was the beginning of the shift from old-fashioned ice boxes to what we would think of as our modern electric refrigerator. As you can see, this one does not require a block of ice. It has some sort of a compressor at the top, which works with presumably Freon, as it does today, and cools your food without the need of a constantly replenishment of a block of ice. Clearly a great threat to a business like the Southland Ice Company. So I can't tell you for sure that he saw that coming or it's just a coincidence, but I would tend to believe, given that it was the same year, that Johnny might have said, you know what? My business might not be sustainable for, maybe it's still good for a few years, but the direction the world is going suggests that I need to do something else. And he branched out to other products because while people might not need giant blocks of ice anymore, they're certainly still going to want milk, eggs, cheese, and other things. He also got kind of lucky because in 1933, Prohibition was repealed. It created a new opportunity to sell beer and liquor. Obviously, all the stores that sold that were no longer selling it or had gone out of business or had gone underground and become illegal. And so in 1933, he dramatically grew his business by adding to those other staples some important new staples like beer and liquor. So that helped grow substantially. And during the same period, Prohibition ended in 1933, but let's just look at the growth of the electric refrigerator. From 1930 to 1940, remember it was introduced in 1927. So between 1927 and 1930, the electric refrigerator went from basically 0 to 8% penetration. By the year 1940, 8% of households, 3 years later, had adopted an electric refrigerator instead of an icebox. And presumably the other 92% were still using the old-fashioned icebox. By 1940, that number had gone from 8% to 44%. So nearly half of the Southland Ice Company's market for blocks of ice was gone by 1940. This is the same period as we just discussed where Prohibition ended and new opportunities grew to sell other items in the beer and wine and alcohol liquor category in addition to the staples that they were selling before. By 1937, they had partnered with a lot of other ice stores, other ice suppliers. They basically brought this model of selling other household food items that you might want to easily pick up quickly to other ice docks, which is what they called the places where they kept the big blocks of ice. And he had tripled his business again by 1937, and at that time decided to rename it, since after all, they really weren't an ice company anymore. So he renamed it to Totem. Certainly not a reference we would use today, since it's a Native American reference and probably not very politically correct. But back then, he called them the Totem. So you get it? You're going to tote them. You're going to get things and tote them away. Anyway, and he used a Native American theme, and he branded his business Totem Stores. A few years later, though, they expanded the hours of the stores so that they were open at 7 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. Hence the shift once again to the new branding, which is stuck to this day, of 7-Eleven. And of course, even after that, when they expanded many of the stores to 24 hours, they kept that 7-Eleven branding. But just as a sense of growth, by 1963, already we're jumping forward another 20 years here, more and more people own cars. This idea of convenience, picking something up on the way home, was growing even further. And in 1963, they opened their 1,000th store. Now, 7-Eleven, I should add, has, before that time and since that time, been an innovator in this space of quick, convenient food and other things. They were the first company to provide the idea of a to-go coffee cup. So common now. They were the first company that said, we're going to use some sort of a cardboard or paper cup and give you coffee you can take with you rather than serving it to you sitting at a counter like a diner would. They were the first company to offer self-serve gas, as well as a self-serve soda fountain. These were all business innovations that started, today all of which are extremely common, but all started with 7-Eleven. Today, 7-Eleven has 1,000 stores. If you recall, we said in 1964, I think it was. Today, they have 71,000 7-Eleven stores in over 15 countries, a far cry from that ice dock back in Dallas, Texas in 1927. They have $54.4 billion in global sales, and they have a market cap of over $40 billion. So I don't know what Uncle Johnny would think if he could see the future of knowing what was going to happen to his Southland Ice Company. But that is the transition that company went through from 1927 to 2021. Now, think about your own company as you think about this story. Wherever you are, imagine it's the equivalent of the Southland Ice Company back in 1927. What is your company going to look like 5 years, 10 years, 20 plus years from now? What are the opportunities that you could be seizing on in your business that might look quite different than the business that you're providing today? And what are the threats to your business? Whether it's in today's world, it's a lot about digital transformation. I guess you could argue that back in 1927, it was about electric transformation, really, right? The new technology of that era was the widespread availability of electricity and motors and taking electricity beyond just lighting to other kinds of household appliances, the standardization of electric power. and the potential for new inventions, in this case for the home, but the truth is it wasn't just the home, it was true in business as well. New inventions that would enable greater convenience, greater capabilities, things you could do in your home that you previously couldn't even do in your home. Basically, greater capability and greater convenience and more value. And well, doesn't that sound a lot like today? Like digital transformation of today? It's a new generation of technology, but from a business perspective, it's very much the same challenge. So on 7-Eleven Day today, this is a little bit of a short episode today, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of an homage to the company 7-Eleven that a lot of us probably take for granted and don't think of as any great transformational force in the world. But in fact, it has been. And so no matter what business you're in, you don't have to be in the microchip business or in some seemingly sexy high-tech business. This is a very meat and potatoes business that has jumped on all kinds of transformation over the years to massively grow its business, massively grow its success, and you can too. So I offer you this. This is maybe a video, especially since it's so short, you might want to share with colleagues or use in a meeting to tee up thinking. So often we get caught in the idea of who are we now? What is our current identity as a business? Who is our customer? What is our product? And, I'm sure there were many other. This was one ice dock back in Dallas, Texas in 1927. How many other similar businesses were there around the United States at that point in time? I mean, I have no idea. I'm guessing tens of thousands, right? Every town probably had a whole bunch of them. And how many of them could draw a line from that point in time to becoming a $40 billion business? I'm guessing the Southland Ice Company is the only one. So if you look around at other companies in your industry and you say, well, gee, I don't see them reinventing themselves. I don't see them completely rethinking their customer, completely rethinking their product. Well, do you want to be like everybody else? Or do you want to be like the Southland Ice Company that then became Totem, that then became 7-Eleven, one of the most successful companies in the world? So that's our show for today. Go out and get yourself a Slurpee. It's not too late to celebrate 7-Eleven Day. And in other words, have a great day, a great week. And just like 7-Eleven, keep transforming.